This is wonderful to have everybody back and to have an opportunity for the rest of this day. It already was part of what I hoped, and it was just great day to begin, but my gosh, there's more, and I'm excited. So I'll hold my feet to the fire a little bit here and keep going so that you get to hear everybody. First, our first speaker is Pat Comella, and Pat may be known to many of you. She studied Bowen theory for many, many, many years, formally, informally, and was on the faculty at the Bowen Center until recently, right? And she is not a family therapist. She is a lawyer and has a vast experience in the issues around society. So she's a great one to have presenting for today. Pat, do you want to announce your title, or you want me to read it for you? It's there to be read. Yeah, it's a mouthful, so go for it.
Can you hear me? Okay. Well, a robust tool for understanding the human as a social animal, part of all life on Earth. And I chose that because I do believe that indeed Bowen theory is a robust tool based upon the uses that I've made of it over many, many years. Today, however, that's my contact information. You don't need to see it here, but I thought that if anyone had any questions or wanted to get in touch with me, that it would be there and easy to see. The overview. So it's really a presentation in two parts. It's been modified several times as I try to figure out what how to put this together. But there'll be an overview of theory, and as it pertains to work that I have done with the societal application of Bowen theory. And it will also talk about Bowen's theory building methodology, what he did as he developed his theory over a number of years. And I have come to believe that understanding the methodology is a very important tool for use today in the here and now, particularly as one works at this level of society, because one has a way of seeing how he did it, and the method that he used is, from my perspective, as relevant today as it was when he used it. And the second part of it will be an application, and it will look at the societal-soil relationship. And that is because in order to deal with the regression hypothesis, I believe it is necessary to get to fundamental relationship. And as was discussed this morning by both Dr. Bowen and Dr. Connor, getting to what the human is all about as it tries to survive as a social species, it is very important to understand that one thing that the human needs are nutrients to survive. And one must then have a fundamental relationship in some way with the earth in order to extract those nutrients. So Bowen theory is about human emotional functioning. Bowen's theory building network is, I'm talking about it in a nutshell. The automatic at the societal level and Bowen's regression hypothesis on the human's disharmony with Earth, that is part of what Bowen theory is all about. And living in better harmony with nature, the study of reactivity factors in relationships governing the environment. Those are the areas that I have thought have been very, very important. In terms of an overview of Bowen theory, Bowen theory regards the human as a product of evolution. It's about human emotional functioning in the relationships to which the human is a part of or connected to, and human emotional systems are human relationship systems are emotional systems. Human relationship systems, they're conceived to be the function of the life forces inherited from man's phylogenetic past that he shares with the lower life forms and that govern the subhuman part of man. This was addressed in part this morning. And it would be synonymous with instinct if instinct is understood as the forces that operate automatically. And so over the years, what I have looked at is trying to understand the forces that operate automatically. The human, an instinctual animal with a marvelous brain. I just love that. He called the human brain marvelous, noting that the technology that has accompanied the maturation of his brain, he recognized that a mere generation ago, technological limitations did not yet permit him to probe the secrets of the universe. But now, through science alone, he knew enough to take a precise trip to the moon and back. He continued, the development of the brain will not permit the human to stop. He just can't give it up in terms of his interest in the universe in which he lives. And I have a note because in November at the Bowen Center annual symposium, the distinguished guest speaker was Jan Sapp. And one of the things that was so fascinating about his presentation was the technology now exists to begin the exploration of the microbial world and begin to get at the origins of life. Now, Bowen goes on, but he says the human has been very slow to learn about his inner space within his own skull. A narcissistic creature, he says, who lives in his own private world and is more interested in a square inch of territory than he is in and fighting for his rights than he is in trying to understand. See, I'm looking at the wrong thing. The multi-generational meaning of life. And I put an emphasis on that because that is what we are. As individuals, we live and we die. The family lives on as a multi-generational organism until its last member is extinct. And so getting a sense of the multi-generational meaning of life has, to me, been, understanding that has been very important as I think about the work that I do in societal applications of Bowen theory. He describes the type of man who can live in better harmony with nature, the one who can, and it's based on knowledge of the human as an instinctual being. He says the thesis here is that the human might modify his future course regarding the coming environmental crises if he can gain some control over his reaction to anxiety and his instinctual emotional reactiveness, and begin taking constructive action based on his fund of knowledge and on logical thinking. Now, in this particular quote, it's rather lengthy, but what I wanted to stress is that he implicates technology in so many of the spectrum of problems that play a role in man's deeper anxieties. And so we see the obvious spiraling of problems related to the rapidly developing technology. I emphasize rapidly because the technology is evolving so fast that it almost sometimes gets beyond the human's capacity to think, and it begins to affect his ability to think. Technology provides people more and more with the higher standards of living to which they become accustomed, maintaining an economy then that provides the masses with the market for the masses and terms of keeping the technology operating, and the rapid depletion of the world's resources that are exhausting the natural resources that supply the technology, and also the byproducts from the technology and the human are affecting the environment. But the research, he then goes on to talk about I am now moving past that overview of what inspired me to write this presentation, and point out that he used an inductive research method which permitted theory building, therapy, and therapy to proceed in a team-like manner. And to him, the importance then of being able to carry out the kind of research that he was doing was that he would have science and technology working in a team-like manner. Now, instinct, in terms of the forces that operate automatically, what I did was I have on my Kindle, I have Bowen's 1978 book, I have the Butler edited book from 2013 of papers from the NIMH study project. I have the family evaluation, which contains his epilogue, and it was published in 1988. So those three books I have done systematic searches on, trying to find out what he said about the forces that operate automatically. And I have picked out quotes that I believe illustrate that. So stresses in two-person relationships he observed to be unstable. When the going got too rough, then there were patterned reactivity that one saw. There could be conflict in the relationships. There could be reciprocal over-functioning. There could be projection if the stress is increased. There could be projection to a third party and constitution of the triangle. And another form in the two-party relationship was distancing, withdrawing emotionally, even if one might be physically present. Now, another area that I thought that has had great and extremely helpful to me is this description of the self. The self is composed of constitutional, physical, psychological, physiological, biological, genetic, and cellular reactivity factors. They move in unison with the psychological factors. And it is let's see. All right. That was so helpful to me because what he's describing is a system, a natural system, the individual. Not only that, but look at the way he's got it lined up. We are going deeper and deeper and deeper into what constitutes the self. And so it provides a way of understanding how the system is put together and what it means when one is looking at it, both in the process of forming the basic level of differentiation and in the process of trying to change one's level of differentiation. Now here's another one, the forces that operate automatically. The child is programmed into the emotional configuration of the family in very early life, following which the amount of unresolved emotional attachment remains relatively fixed throughout life, except for functional shifts in the parents. And the family does not have conscious choice about the selection of adaptive patterns. Again, that is occurring automatically. They were programmed into the spouses in their nuclear in their own parental families. Oops. Oh, I'm going backwards again. Sorry. The triangle between self and parents is the most important primary triangle in life, and the one in which the person develops the triangle relationship patterns that remain relatively fixed for life. These are all from this. And now we look at the forces. The triangle is the basic building block of the emotional system. A triangle is in constant motion that operates automatically like emotional reflexes, and that are so predictable that one can precisely predict the next move in the system. Why are these so important? It's a sense of getting a sense of what this theory is about. It is about the manifestations of pattern reactivity that drive the processes that we see that affect our functioning automatically. I'm going to skip over that. For those of you who are ordering the DVDs, you'll see what's there. There was conversation about Jack Calhoun this morning, and I'm now moving into the part of thinking about what humans have in common with other animals. So wherever animals live, they are constantly altering the environment about them, biologically conditioning the environment, which has been repeatedly shown to alter the welfare of existing members of a population as well as the density. And this is the most important part of it for me, as soon as the animal begins to condition the environment through the elaboration of relatively permanent artifacts, such as trails, nests, burrows, etc., biological conditioning assumes a more cultural aspect, and it further serves as a physical mold in which the social matrix takes its form. Now, one of the struggles as I have tried to use the theory has been to understand how instinct and technology collude, and this happens in non-human animals as they biologically condition their lives. So I'm taking a very broad view of what we mean by technology and looking at what do we have in common with other life forms. And it turns out that there is a huge suite of animals that make and use tools. And they're using the tools to condition their environment to obtain the nutrients, etc., that they need to survive, to manage threat, etc. And so what we find is that we do have something in common. The animals, the non-human animals, obviously do not have the capability to elaborate the technology that the humans have, but nonetheless, what they do is affecting their ability to live and to thrive and to reproduce. And I think that's very important because it makes a link between instinct and technology and the automaticity in technological applications that can also attend the human species. Now, this is a description of the method. The current working hypothesis controls the research. The principles follow from the working hypotheses. The rules are grounded in principle and take into account the contextual, physical, and social environments in which the behavior is and functioning unfold. And the techniques are appropriate tools to conduct the observations that follow the principles and rules. And it's interesting that therapy he notes, is a research tool. So changes to the working hypothesis are only made on the basis of new information and experience. And that is very important in terms of in terms of understanding how this iterative thing proceeds in a team-like manner, the interplay of science and technology. Now, again, to some, theory building guided theory guided observations in an ongoing inductive process, and out of this process emerged in a team-like manner adjustments to the theory building method, extension and reintegration of theory, adjustments to therapy, and on the basis of new information and experience gathered through the observational process using the most current theory building framework. And that leads me to the belief that one looks at the totality of the theory as Bowen left it and beginning to understand the jumping off point for doing work in the societal area. One doesn't really use part of the theory, one uses the whole theory. And the principles of the triangle are extremely important to understand because that is one of the tools for managing process and for understanding emotional process at the societal level as well as at the family level as well as at the extended family level in organizations. And that the principles that can be derived from that allow for one to work on very complex matters or very simple matters, but to understand the complexity of it as one thinks about the number of triangles and interlocking triangles that can be activated in an emotional system, and then figuring out ways to approach that. Again, multi-generational transmission process is very important in understanding this historical context, particularly not only at the family level, as was discussed this morning, but also in dealing with societal questions. Now, I arrived at, in trying to understand the societal-soil relationship, we have an example in which fundamental forces operate automatically, forces that humans have in common with non-human animals. Now, this goes back to Hillel, who was one of the distinguished guest speakers at the Societal Conference in 2009. He makes the point that the soil is a mixture of mineral particles, organic matter, etc., gaseous nutrients that, when infused with water, constitute the fertile substrate for the initiation and maintenance of terrestrial life. And so it is that from which we find nutrients. Without soil, the majority of terrestrial creatures, including humans, could not exist. And so if we look at that, when humans interact with the soil automatically responds. I mean, it functions as if it were a living organism to the human intervention, and the human automatically responds to the soil. There is a direct correlation between the intensity of human activities regarding the soil and the intensity of the soil's response. A human population, it plays a central role in human subsistence, both directly and indirectly, even when the subsistence comes in some form from the aquatic environment. As human populations increase, the society demands increased productivity from the soil. If pushed too far, the soil begins to exhibit symptoms that may increase in severity over time, and that may ultimately result in decreased productivity and perhaps complete exhaustion. So there is a rich literature over millennia. I mean, one can find rich sources in the Bible, for instance. There is sufficient detail to see how the human then strikes the balance regarding the sustainability of over the long-term health of the society and the sustainability of the life of the soil. So when you add in weather, now you have really gotten to a nice source of anxiety, ongoing sustained anxiety, because the climate, the weather, etc., it affects the risk of a less than satisfactory harvest. And so, will there be enough to go around for everyone? To enjoy, to survive, to enjoy security, to enjoy well-being, to reproduce. In other words, at a deep instinctual level, there is always a chronic sustained threat of an inadequate supply of the nutrients necessary to sustain life. So chronic sustained anxiety is always a present factor affecting the functioning of the organism, and modern agriculture may change the risk and its manifestations, but the risk is never zero and the anxiety never goes away. So anyway, those are my thoughts about that particular application of Bowen theory to thinking about fundamental relationships of the human with the earth. And I have others, but I'm out of time, so let me stop here. Thank you. And sorry for the...